Where do you see is the most significant opportunity for and use cases for generative AI, specifically for procurement team? What are some other ways that, generative AI can support procurement? Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to another generative AI session. I'm super excited today. Today, we're going to be talking about improved visibility and automation with AI with procurement. Super excited about this conversation. The procurement process and procurement function is filled with so many detailed processes, so many different frameworks, so much that finance teams and procurement teams can be leveraging with generative AI to produce value, to have better, accurate data, and more insights into the business. So, really excited to join for the panel today. For introductions wise, my name is Chris Ortega. I'm the CEO of Fresh FP&A, and I run a global fractional CFO and advisory service company. And I'll pass it over to Vin.
I'm Vin Vashishta. I'm the author of From Data to Profit. I'm also the founder and CEO of V Squared. We're one of the smallest and oldest data and AI consulting companies. I help companies figure out how to actually make money from data analytics, machine learning, all of this technology.
Christine?
Awesome. Hi, I'm Kristen Kerr. I have been a data scientist since 2010, working in the utility industry, then healthcare. I spent about 6 years in e-commerce, mostly doing advanced marketing analytics. And now I am the founder of Data Moves Me, where I do data science consulting and I build really cool projects with artificial intelligence, helping other brands evangelize their products.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Villablanca. I am the co-founder and CEO of the Future Insights Network, which is a network of over 130,000 senior supply chain leaders across the world talking about transformation. Transformation is my gig. I talk about it on my podcast, The Transform Talks. I talk about it on Supply Chain TV. And really, I spend all of my time traveling, talking to people about how we can implement transformational change in the supply chain.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, really excited for this panel. And I want to jump right into the first question. And the first question, we'll tee this up for you, Vin. Where do you see is the most significant opportunity for and use cases for generative AI, specifically for procurement teams?
Well, I think one of the challenges is we say the technology, we say generative AI, and then we say it can do this, and it sort of pigeonholes people's thinking. It's one of the reasons why use case discovery and selection, it's some of the biggest challenges, especially for clients that I'm talking to. So let me explain how data and AI create value first. So procurement, it's forward-looking by nature. It's complex. It involves significant risk. There's a lot of uncertainty. That's what data and AI do. They better than really any other technology. They manage complexity and reduce uncertainty. So instead of just saying, here's the opportunity, I want you to look for places where there's uncertainty. And if you had clarity, you would be able to deliver more value, or there would be some return on investment there. Any place that you have complexity and it takes you a whole bunch of people to manage that part of the workflow or that process. Those are amazingly high value use cases for data and AI. So instead of saying, hey, do this, I think that's at least a way to kick it off. This is how you should be thinking about the technology, managing complexity, reducing uncertainty. And that's pretty much the description of everything in procurement supply chain. Yeah, that's basically your job, right?
Exactly. Christine, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with Vin. And when I think about the word uncertainty, statistics is the study of uncertainty in data. So I think that where we see the most significant opportunities are the areas where we're both going to save time, but also that data democratization, right? Because the things like your demand forecasts that really require a technical skill, when those become more streamlined, we open that up to more people being able to participate and more people being able to really benefit from the data. So for me, it's the things like the demand forecasts, the spend analysis, and gathering the patterns and trends there, and really, opening it up so that people can spend more time on being able to analyze and understand and strategically think about this data rather than spending the time gathering it or, trying to build these demand models themselves.
Yeah,
Nice.
you know what? I'd have to agree with my colleagues here. I think to me, if I were to say generative AI, where the focus is so much on the technology that really the huge benefit is the people, is to the people, right? So people in procurement, people in supply chain are spending a huge amount of time trying to navigate this uncertainty that we're living in, because that complexity that Vin was referring to and Kristen was referring to, that is not going away. We are living in a volatile world where every morning we wake up and we spin the wheel of what's next, right? So the people in procurement and the people in supply chain have an opportunity here to get rid of some of the mundane tasks, some of the really repetitive tasks, and get to the heart of value, within procurement and supply chain. And that will be like Kristen was saying, spend analysis, supplier selection, crunching through mountains of data. As we become a more connected world, we're producing way more data. And so really getting grips to all of those things to make it easier for people in supply chain and procurement, excuse me, to actually drive value.
Yeah, I think one thing I love, like the managed complexity. I love the strategic decision making that we talked about. And when you think about the procurement function, these people are inundated with data, right? And leading high growth finance teams, whether you have that outsourced procurement function or you have it like internally, the ability to be able to action data and turn that into bottom line impacts, right? Like renegotiating a great contract or even having the right language, right? To renegotiate, to look at, to having frameworks. I think it's a one of the areas in finance organization that doesn't get a lot of love, right? Everybody in finance always talks about the office of the CFO. We always talk about accounting. We always talk about FP&A. Meanwhile, procurement's over here saying, hey, we're actually driving the cost savings. We're driving the negotiation. We're driving the optimization of spend. Like we're in the front lines of managing this. So what better way to equip them with the technology that they need to help them focus on more value added activities in the business? I couldn't agree more. Which leads to my second question. And Kristen, we're going to lead this off with you, right? We talked a little bit about that ability to level up, right? That strategic decision making. My question to you is, what are some of those mundane tasks that procurement teams are doing right now, or workflows that they're doing, that generative AI 1000% is going to be able to help?
Yeah, I mean, 1000%. And the mundane use cases are sort of my favorite. Right now, I'm building something for myself that is going to take the school administration emails, all the emails from the teacher, the sports activities, the things that, every day I am synthesizing this information myself, right? And it's going to take these emails and it's going to just give me bullet points of who do I owe money to? Were my kids specifically mentioned anywhere? What dates do I need to think about? And of course, this is a different world, right? Because when we start to get into industry applications, we start to think about like the interconnectedness of our data, which really is going to be one of the big things that holds people back. It's not the building the models. A lot of these things we have, libraries and stuff that we can string together, but it's the regulatory and compliance, the ethics and everything else. And so where I really see the mundane tasks in the procurement space getting a lot of help is being able to do the same type of synthesizing in procurement, but for things like templates for RFPs and RFQs based on requirements and specifications, help with purchase order generation. And that will really allow these procurement professionals more time to focus on strategically leveraging this information rather than spending their time doing that. But again, it's the hurdles are the things that aren't actually building the model. But I
love
huge.
that.
I think the mundane stuff, the opportunities there is huge.
Oh, 100%. Maria, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this? These mundane tasks, like we got to get these people out of this low frequency, low touch point. What are some of those mundane or workflows from your perspective, Maria?
From my perspective, again, it's going through RFPs, RFQs, the tendering processes, selecting suppliers, scenario planning. If things go wrong, All of that is just necessary stuff, but it's stuff that occupies a lot of time. And again, if we throw in that complexity element, and one of the big fears people have is, oh my God, is AI going to come and take my job, right? No, not at all. AI is going to come and make your job a whole lot easier so that you can
Boom.
spend time on the things that actually add value to business, that will really set your business apart, give it a competitive advantage, right? And so no one wants to be wading through contractual language. I mean, maybe some people do, lawyers do, but I think if you work in procurement, you don't really want to go into 25 pages deep into some language to select your supplier. Now, I want to also add something else, which is as we start to drive sustainability initiatives, carbon footprint tracking, all of those things, that's complex stuff. I'm at a conference now and I saw a really fascinating presentation about trying to get the carbon footprint on all of the supplier, the supplier line, right? And when you think of products that are so complex that have multiple tiers in order to get made, that kind of work is extremely complex and it is extremely tedious. And there's not a lot of really standardized measuring either. So having to interpret all of those things and then create workflows and models based on scenario planning. How am I going to choose this one? Or what if this one isn't available and that one isn't available? I think all of those things can just be put into AI and make the selection process a lot easier.
Nice, nice. Yeah, can consolidate, making it a lot easier. I think it gets to Kristen's point, right? Christine point is where consolidating it, bringing this all together in like one cohesive place. Then, what are your thoughts?
Well, again, it's back to something Maria said earlier. This isn't a generative AI or really any kind of AI story. It's a people story. One of my
Hmm.
first clients in data science was in the supply chain domain, and they picked me, a really small company, over a whole lot of larger companies because, I later found out it was because I talked about their challenges and how solutions would meet their needs and what kind of value it would create instead of talking about AI, data, big data. And I think we get caught in this trap where we begin to say, oh, we're going to automate your mundane tasks. Well, right, but we don't ask, what are these mundane tasks? We sort of
Nice.
tell you, this is what we're going to do for you. But we should be asking you, what would you like me to do for you? And I think this is a big opportunity, especially in areas like procurement and supply chain, because it's so complex that data scientists and developers, we're not domain experts, and there's no way. So back to talking about not replacing people. We can't. I mean, come on. You see how complex this is. So there's an important collaboration that I'm really excited about. When it comes to mundane tasks, we're taking a lot off your plate, but I think the collaboration component between developers and non-developers to actually build solutions together is huge. Data scientists and non-data scientists working together. That's what I see as most exciting. So we're talking about taking things off of your plate on one side, but we're also talking about bringing you into the creation process and the development process in a way that leverages your domain expertise and provides some tools. It's one of the things generative AI does is it lets non-developers, non-data scientists do some of our work. It's not just about accessibility to the data and to automation. It's also about accessibility to a little bit of our world. And I think that collaborative approach is where we go moving forward.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that collaborative approach and how you ended it, right? And to me, when I think of the procurement function and looking at, and I'll just add to what this great panel has said, right? One of the most important things that the procurement function has, right? And we see this in a lot of organizations, a lot of clients that we work with. They want to go look at the new shiny technology, right? And it's like, hey, we want to go get a new FP&A tool, or we want to go get a new ERP, or we want to go look at the new hottest predictive forecasting model, right? And think about all the information, all the competitors they have to gather, all the price points. What are the pros and cons of the tools? Are they global? Imagine being able to use generative AI and write that prompt and say, hey, you are a CFO and you're evaluating next gen financial planning and analysis tools, right? Create me a table template that gives me the pros and cons of these 5 tools. What are the price points, any user feedback, and you're just literally asking it. It's like almost your outsourced procurement. You're leading it and saying, hey, my CFO really wants this. And I know how the CFO wants a very condensed table form, pros, cons, cost, user feedback, and all that information. And now here's where the power comes, right? You're not starting from that 0%, right? You're starting at like the 60, 70% now because you've been able to gather this information. Now you're saying, hey, take this information, make it into a table that I can easily export into Excel, right? Have these table columns, have these rows. And then now you've got that information to where, think about, you would have to gather all the like Google searches and all these searches and where do I got to go find this? All that time, energy, effort, and capacity would have been spent just preparing the information, right? Just to get
Mhm.
to this point where you're preparing it. Now you're already there. So now in the finance team and the procurement function, we can now focus that time in like that to exactly what you said, Vin, that collaborative element of it, right? Let's go bring in operations. Let's go bring in sales. Let's go bring in marketing, right? I think another use case in procurement that it can have a lot of is just overall analysis, right? If you look at your tech stack and say, hey, I think one of the fallouts or one of the carryaways from the pandemic is like most finance and most teams are inundated with technologies, right? Like they have Teams, they have Zoom, they have Google Meets, they have like 8 different technologies to solve like one category in the business. So if you're looking for like a cost effective way to say, hey, we've got all of these tools in this particular place, like give me the competitive landscape of this and like the use cases in the business and which one should I go like consolidate, right? It's not, making sure that everybody gets the technology that they need, but now you have that strategic direction that you can go into. So to me, I think that's like 2 really practical use cases that you can go in and like prompt right now to be able to use. Cool. So my next question, kind of going into that, right, is we talked about, the significant opportunities, right? We talked about like the transformational aspect of it. What are some other ways that, a generative AI can support procurement? Not necessarily in the workflows or in the processes, but what are some other ways that generative AI can support procurement teams? And Maria, we'll start that off with you.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Chris, when you talked about the possibilities, right? The possibilities of not having to churn through all of that data and then have more collaborative conversations, like Vin said, right? So it's like, maybe if you're not old enough, but if you remember when the internet first came out, right? We had so much information at our fingertips that we could just type and go, what is the answer to this question, right? Now
Yeah.
imagine that this is the internet times a million. This is having your own personal assistant within procurement available to give you answers to the questions you have about what's possible. So to me, it's about the possibility. And so once I know that I've got this support, this almost like de facto team of procurement at my fingertips, I'm able to then say, well, let me give you some scenarios. What if my CEO says this, or what if my CFO says that and they want to see so and so? Could you scour the internet, scour the data points, utilize the existing data points? You can upload information, data, you can upload workflows, you can upload papers, and then say, based on this information, what are the outputs? What can you do for us? And I think that's
Nice.
it. That is the having your own personal team in your pocket, basically.
Totally, totally. Like having and somebody dropped in the comments, and I love this comment, and then I want to get to you on the same question before we jump into it. They say it's like having your own like personal intern or personal assistant, right? That's 1,000% facts. Like if I could do an emoji right here, it'll be like a fire emoji because that is 1,000%, right? Like whether you're in procurement, supply chain, finance, like having that ability to go like, and I always talk about AI, right? It's like the smartest, dumbest friend I always wanted, right? It's like that person that when Jeopardy comes on, you're like, yeah, buddy, we're about to win, right? But that's how you can leverage it. And Maria, directly to your point, like you can leverage that piece of it to put you in the right activity, to get that collaboration, which are really those high skills. Vin, I want you to weigh in on this one.
Well, I think the first thing we have to realize is it's not just about generative AI. When I said it's also a people story, now let me talk about the other technologies that are involved, because we have to think about which processes, which workflows will have positive ROI. And if you don't see the entire big picture of technology behind generative AI, you can make some pretty bad decisions here. Uh, there are multiple cloud. We need cloud to make data accessible and to build as well as making models accessible by everyone, not just one organization in a silo, but by everyone. We need digital apps behind generative AI. If we don't have that, a generative interface, as useful as ChatGPT feels, there's more behind it. If you have really a lot of apps, a lot of productivity tools, so we need more behind a generative interface to take advantage of the technology's sort of orchestration power. And we need high quality data. We need that business or customer context, which is really that domain knowledge that we're pulling out of all of these data generating sources, or there's nothing worth accessing. If the data is bad, there's nothing to access. We also need more than just one type. I mean, generative AI is not the AI. There's a whole bunch of data science and machine learning approaches that, and we don't see this a lot, that sit behind a generative interface or that collaborate with generative interfaces in order to deliver value. So you have descriptive modeling, predictive, prescriptive. Those deliver significant value to specific processes and workflows. So what you really need to do is focus on those processes and workflows where, again, back to managing complexity, reducing uncertainty, but where doing that will have the highest possible value because, again, there's a lot of technology behind generative AI. It's not as simple as ChatGPT. There's a lot of value there, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. And what's under the surface, it's on the one hand, it does cost a bit, but on the other hand, it can support use cases and deliver functionality that have never been possible before. So we have to focus on the unique strengths of the technologies and focus it towards use cases, processes, workflows where it creates significant value, not just for the business, but we also need to start looking at customers too and delivering customer value so we can improve revenues.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that, man. Delivering value to drive impact, both bottom line impact and people impact. Christine, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I love what everyone has said, and I particularly enjoyed hearing you, Chris, talk about the market research because that is something that can take a significant amount of time. And I think that when we're looking at implementing different use cases for generative AI, it really is about just taking a step back and looking at, how long do each of these tasks take? Because we could go in a million different directions at this point, but literally sitting down and making a list and saying like, okay, if I optimize this, how much time am I really saving from a people perspective? Or, does this make processes more available to less technical people? And from that perspective, start to say, okay, I'm going to prioritize these based on how much time am I saving people, or how am I making access better to others? And I think that one of the things that's going to come to the top is market research is going to be a big saver. Things like supplier selection, document generation, contract analysis. But again, there's just so many use cases, and it's really going to be taking a step back and thinking about strategically what is going to have the most benefit to the business and where should we start first.
Absolutely love it. I love that. And to me, like, this is where, and think about it, right? I think one common fallacy, and I just gave a presentation. I was out in Boston, and I was leading a generative AI session with a bunch of CFOs and a bunch of financial professionals, right? People have this common misconception that AI just like started like a year ago, right? Like once
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT started, it was like, oh man, that's when AI started. But
Yep.
when you really go look at the history of AI, right? Like it started way back, way back. I think it was like the early 1893 or something like that. If my history plays me correct, right? Like it was back there, right? But now we kind of cross this continuum where technology is able to keep up, right? Because think about it. ChatGPT, GPT-4, when you think of Bart recently dropped like this year. GPT-4, GPT-3 was not even a year ago, right? So think about like how far we have come. And the next question I want to ask, it's a pretty provocative one, right? And Maria, kind of dovetails off of what you talked about. I read a super interesting statistic, and it said like over the next 10 years, generative AI is going to produce somewhere between 950 million jobs, right? New opportunities, right? But it's also going to eliminate like close to 800 million, right? And I forget where I read this study. And I was like, when you look at that, the net of it, right? 950, 800, that's about 150, which one thing that I've started to see, and I want to really get this panel's thoughts around this one. I seen the first role that I was like, oh my goodness, this is a game changer. It was called a prompt engineer, right? And it literally it spelled out. It was like this is a person that's really familiar with generative AI, and they're gonna be like helping the people that are the beginner levels, right? That don't know how to prompt. They use Chat GPT or they use Bart, and they're like, "Oh man, it doesn't work for me," right? But we already starting to see roles, a prompt engineer, and this was a six-figure job, right? And I can totally see the value that it has in the business. I can see somebody sitting down with HR, sitting down with procurement, and saying, "Hey, like I want to get my familiar with this, but I also want to leverage these generative AI functions externally and internally." So my question around this one, and Maria, we'll kick this one off for you, right? We talked about not taking jobs, right? What are some other roles, maybe in procurement, maybe in supply chain, maybe other aspects of the business that we can see generative AI actually creating new roles for people?
You know, it's a crystal ball question, right? I mean, and I don't have one. What I got to end with here is that I started this by talking about AI being a people story. And if you go back to history, humanity has always found a way to find jobs, to evolve, right? There were no manicurists 100 years ago. There were no social media managers 10 years ago. So there's a number of jobs like prompt engineers, like I don't know, strategic thinkers or critical thinkers that are going to be important to create the kind of agile environment that we need for the complex world that we live in and that we're going to continue to live in. So could I tell you an actual job that might be created? I don't know, but I know that the possibilities are endless. The question now is about making sure that with the pace of technological change that we adapt really quickly too. So play with ChatGPT if you haven't done so already. Think of the possibilities. Talk to people that are prompt engineers and find out what they're doing. So I think to me, the question is going to be not about how many jobs are going to be created or even if. It's going to be about what can I do to make sure that I'm one of those people that is embracing this new technology.
Boom, boom. Getting ahead of the curve. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's important to think about skating towards opportunities, skating towards where the technology is going. Don't worry about where it is yesterday. Don't worry about where it is right now, because generative AI next year will not look like this. We will not have
Mm.
just generative AI next year. We need to talk about all of the other types of data science and machine learning that we can bring to play. And also don't get wrapped up in the two letters AI. We're not really there yet.
Mhm.
So the capabilities that you'll hear a lot about in the hype cycles are distracting versus really actionable. What you want to do, engage your technical teams and talk about not just what is happening today, but what does the research tell us is coming in 1 year, in 2 years, and in 5 years. 10 to 15 is almost unpredictable territory because
Yeah.
we're going to have other technologies coming into play. You talk about quantum computing. 10 years from now, we will begin to see a lot of use cases around quantum computing. We will begin to see more abundant, cheaper energy come into play. So there are more technologies on the horizon. Clients hate it when I say this. We live in a multi-technology environment, but we're also continuously transforming because these waves will not stop. So think about what opportunities the technology that's being built today will develop and deliver in 2 years, 3 years. What will it make possible? And not necessarily begin building today, but begin building what you have now with an eye towards what is inevitable. We know there are going to be some advances around robotics. Start thinking about how that impacts the business and where can we make space today so that adopting the next generation of technology is less expensive and more feasible. So I think that's how we have to think about these things. More forward-looking, more prescriptive, but more pragmatic. What can we actually do with this? And not necessarily, let's build it today. No, let's get ready.
Nice, nice. Christine, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Next 10, 15 years, like when you think about procurement, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of roles that you were talking about,
Yeah.
we are paving the way to open up to the like real idea of the domain expert, right? Like in data science, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, you couldn't escape that Venn diagram that had the computer science, the statistics, and the business understanding. But the business understanding always sort of felt like an add-on. And by carving out time and by automating some of these manual tasks, we're really opening up to get people to be able to focus on and become deep experts in their area in the business. And, we talk about all of these different use cases, and I do see them within the next couple years being something that we can use. However, you know, this isn't going to be like the seamless, it's going to be like that intermediary towards getting towards that, 10, 15 years from now, where like ethical and sustainability considerations will be seamlessly integrated into our applications, or procurement assistants will be able to offer real-time strategy advice that we can actually more rely on than today. Today, we're going to have these things, we're going to be able to use them, but we're going to have a more careful eye. And, and through doing that, it's going to help us build that expertise. But also then in the future, my crystal ball is that, the regulatory and compliance considerations and the other things that we need to be very careful about will, really be integrated in a way that's meaningful and that we trust.
I love it, man. I love it. And I love everybody's perspective, right? Maria is like, hey, be ready for what those jobs and what those opportunities level you up, right? Then you have one of the best quotes, and I'm gonna say it: build today with the eye towards the inevitable. Oh, that just fire right there. And then Christine, right? Like building that value and complimenting us to bring, to bring more value to the business, right? Bring more value to the people, right? I think these are really, really exciting times that we're in right now. And the exciting part is we're not even at like the intermission of this yet, right? We're at the beginning stages. And I think overall, uh learn it, apply it. This isn't gonna go anywhere, right? This isn't like one of those fads. This isn't gonna be gone. Like this is a wave that's here. And the more that you can get practical application, the more that you can learn, the more that you can get use cases and just get in the game, you're gonna have a significant advantage. So hey, I want to thank everybody, thank all the attendees, thank you for everyone that attended the live. I want to thank this entire panel. I was sitting here taking notes. We'll go around quickly. If people want to learn more about you, Maria, where can they learn more about you, connect with you?
Listen to my podcast, Transform Talks, or connect with me on LinkedIn, Maria Villablanca.
Awesome. Ben, where can people learn more about you, connect with you, get those nuggets that you're dropping, Ben?
Datascience.vin. Thank you to the French wine industry for naming a domain after me. Everything about me, you can find it in one place.
Nice, nice. Christine, what about you?
Yeah, so absolutely follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I live.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So everybody, thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending. Thank the speakers as well too. We'll be kicking off our next AI session in here in about 2 weeks. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your energy and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.